Hello there, Grandpa Jim. How you doing? It's Parshas chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah after she's dead, and we learn about a very important figure whose name is Rivkah. Now, I always thought that Rivkah meant noose. Now, hang yourself noose. But according to one highly respected dictionary, Hebrew to Hebrew, it actually means a yoke. If you have two animals who are supposed to be pulling something together, you have to have a wooden bar over their shoulders, and you have to have something under their necks, and then they pull together. So the idea of the name of Rivkah is that two pull together. And in her life with Yitzchak, that's what they did. They pulled together. Yitzchak didn't have another wife, as Abraham did. He didn't have multiple wives, as Yaakov did. He had one wife. Now, Rivkah lived back in the old country where Abraham came from, in between the Tigris and Euphrates River, and her father's name was Besuel, and he was an evil man. And her brother's name was Lavan. We'll meet him later when Yaakov comes to marry Rachel and Leah. He was also an evil man. This happens in Torah a number of times. There was a righteous king named Hezekiah, who was close to being Mashiach. His father was Achaz. He was an evil king. And his son, Manasseh, was the most evil king who ever ruled. And he was righteous. So you wonder, how is it that Besuel had the merit to have such a righteous daughter? Maybe he didn't. So why would Hashem want Yitzchak, why would Abraham want Yitzchak to marry a girl who came from such evil surroundings? So for this year, I relied upon two sources. One was a woman named Dina Coopersmith, who writes articles on Isha Torah online. And the other is the Encyclopedia of Jewish Personalities by Yishai Hasidah. And the Dina Coopersmith quotes the following from a source called Tiferet Zion. Since God knew that the Jewish people would be spread out among the nations when in exile, and typically one is influenced by his surrounding culture, he wanted our matriarchs and patriarchs to be among evil people and withstand their influence. In this way, their descendants will have the strength to hold onto their religion even in exile, since the acts of the ancestors are a sign for their descendants. Okay? So we, through Rivkah and Rachel and Leah, learn how to deal with evil. Yaakov had to deal with Esau, who was evil. Then he had to flee, and he went to live with Lavan, who was evil. And through this, we have the capacity to live in the midst of evil people without being influenced by them. So now Eliezer is Abraham's servant, and he comes to this far-off land and is hoping to find the right family and the right person. And he prays to God, and he says, if a girl comes out and I say to her, please may I have a drink of water, and she says, yes, here's water for you, and I'll water your camels also. That will show that she has the nature of kindness. And as Abraham is chesed, so Yitzchak inherited his chesed and other issues. So now it's a lot of water. One camel can drink 53 gallons of water when he's on empty. Your average bathtub holds 42 gallons of water. That means 1 gallon, 1.25 bathtubs per camel, and Eliezer brought 10 camels. So that's 530 gallons, which is about 12 or 13 bathtubs full. But luckily for Rivkah, she was a princess. She had never gone out before to draw water. It wasn't her job. But something moved her, and she came out. She was drawing water, and she saw Eliezer, and she spoke to him, and then she started filling the trough for the camels. But she didn't have to go down into the well. The water leapt up into her jug, filled it, then she just had to pour it out in the trough. And by this, Eliezer saw that Hashem had granted him his wish, his prayer, and he was able to go and to the house of Bethuel and Lavan and tell his business. And they said, let's eat, and then we'll talk. And Eliezer said, no, first I do my business, then I eat. Which is a good thing, because Bethuel saw that Eliezer had brought much riches with him, and so he wanted to kill Eliezer and take all the money. But because his plate got cold, he never ate from it. They took it away, and Bethuel ended up eating it by accident, and that was his last meal. That's a nice guy. Bethuel wants to kill Eliezer and take all the money. So, after that, who's left? Lavan and the rest of the family. And Lavan says, okay, if you want the girl, we'll bring her out and we'll ask her. So they bring her out and they say, Rivkah, will you go with this man? And she said, I will. And then they said, but tell Eliezer, but please just let her stay for a little bit, like a year or 10 months, just so we could say goodbye to her. And he said, I must go now. And they turned to her and said, are you willing to go with him right away? And she said, yep. She sensed, she knew that she was going to meet a righteous man and live in a righteous home. And this would be her destiny in life. And she didn't want to wait. Now, keep in mind, at this time, she was 3 years old. Big decision. But she was not going to stay in that house a minute longer. So she went with Eliezer and came, and when they got near to where Yitzchak lived, she saw a man praying in the field, and she said, who is that man? And Eliezer said, that's my master Yitzchak. That will be your husband. And she covered her face with a veil. Now, by the way, there's one. She then subsequently had twins. Not right away. Yitzchak did not actually marry her until he was till she was 14. But she eventually had twins. And can you think of anybody else in the Torah who covered her face with a veil and later had twins? Let me know. Okay, so she came into Yitzhak's house. She came into Sarah's tent. And prior to Sarah's death, when she lived in her tent, there was always a cloud over the tent, indicating that this was a holy abode. And the dough in her house was always blessed, always multiplied abundantly, rose well, and there was a lamp always burning from Shabbos to Shabbos inside the tent. And when Rivkah came and moved into Sarah's tent, the cloud and the abundant challah and the light reappeared, and thus Yitzchak knew that this was the right one for him, and he was comforted after having lost his mother. So, I don't suggest that any of you girls go off and find your husband before you're at least 4 years old. 3 is young. So, have a good Shabbos.